Hey guys, it's Mitch here. Hard to come on the air with some news we got, but I wanted to be able to let our listeners know kind of what's been going on and kind of the path forward here. But as we entered the excitement of week one and really got looking forward to all these exciting games, which we'll get into, just before kickoff, we did receive some unfortunate news from the sidelines of EM Budco Field in Morrison. I was alerted unexpectedly of news that the famous winged helmet of the Morrison Mustangs is now a relic of history, and the team has moved forward with a new helmet for the first time in decades. If you've listened to this podcast, you know that this is a tragic event in my life, and I'm going to do my best to move forward with the season and to provide you all with the information and the coverage that you all deserve. And I appreciate your thoughts during this time.
Talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome into View from the West podcast, the podcast covering Illinois high school football on the western side of the state of Illinois. I'm your host, Greg Armstrong, joined by a mourning Mitch Stormer, a loyal Morrison Mustang who was delivered some shocking news on Friday. Mitch, how you holding up?
We're still waiting for it to set in, really. You know, there's those 7 stages of grief. I'm not sure I'm past the second one. But you know what? Hey, it's a new season. There's new beginnings everywhere. We'll save the helmet talk for later. But
all right.
Hey, you know what? You were on the sidelines this week. We've got a ton of great stuff from week one. It was so exciting. Everything that we wanted it to be, right? And here we go. We are in the season now, and can't wait to break down what we saw on Friday night.
You know, I think as the saying goes, you know, in 1 week of football, you may never be as good as you think you are, but you're never maybe as bad as you maybe think you are. So we're here for the week one breakdown to give some kudos, but also maybe a little therapy session for the teams that had things not go their way in week one. A lot of football left to be played. So whether you're riding that high or trying to come out of that low, I think either way, you know, we're here to talk through it for you. A lot of football left, but what a perfect, beautiful night of football it was in week one. Man, I got to cover what I think are going to end up being 4 playoff teams in 2 games in the Northwest Upstate Illini. We'll get into that in a little bit, but just a perfect evening for high school football, driving from Fulton to Morrison on my way from game 1 to game 2. Man, the sunset was incredible. It was just, it's one of those nights, you know, early in the season, but man, it had all the feels.
Yeah, it looked like that across all the games that we cover. So, you know, it was a hot week. I don't know how it was on the sidelines on Friday. But yeah, we're not, you know, it's like we're in the fall season now that football started, but not those fall temps. But on nights like Friday, you know, we might not get a lot of those left. So yeah, it was great scenery there from the pictures that I saw.
Yep, cooling down a little bit. Still some cramping and some issues with that on the sidelines, but ultimately
that was you.
Yeah, that was me.
That was you dealing with
cramping on the sidelines.
Yeah,
you know,
it's early. I get it.
I battled through it. You know, fought my way through it like any good player on the field.
That's right.
So, all right, Mitch. Well, you know who we're powered by. Breedlove Sporting Goods. Tell the people what they need to know.
Yeah, tonight's episode, as always, is brought to you by our friends at Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, and online team stores. They provide all the same sporting goods services as the big nationwide companies, but with a faster turnaround, and their uniform pricing is a fraction of the cost you're probably used to. They offer brand names such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. Check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or shoot Cal Breedlove an email at calbreedlove@gmail.com for more information.
Absolutely. We thank Breedloves for their sponsorship. We love it. The t-shirt sales went over well. Orders have
Yeah.
been placed, and hopefully they're, getting set, getting shipped out. They'll be ready for games in the not too distant future. So we'll be ready to go there. Well, let's dive in. Week 1 of the high school football season has wrapped up. We'll start with our viewpoints, Mitch. It's a segment we've done in the past. We'll jump into it this year. We each give our kind of headlines from what was
Sure.
Friday night. I'll let you start. I'll let you go with what stood out to you. What's catching your eye in week 1?
Sure. I think kind of going off a little bit about what you said earlier, I think some of the things that we saw on Friday or in week 1 were or went as expected, right? In other places, I think there's more questions still than answers. Some teams maybe didn't look as sharp in week 1, even if they won, or some teams that didn't perform well at all that maybe we expected them to play a little better. Is that indicative of how the season's going to go? Maybe that's too early to tell on either side of that coin, but yeah, there were some wins and some performances. We'll get into it a little bit. Stockton, for example, right, put up a really good fight up against Dupec. EP getting a big win against Kiwani. So things like that, where some things might have impressed me or that I was shocked by, but maybe it's still too early to tell on that front. Another thing I liked, boy, was the QB play outstanding in week 1, Greg. Braden Little, Colin Schweigen, Cale Filler, Cooper Hoffman, Lane Wheelwright, the list goes on and on. Unbelievable numbers that they put up this week. They do it a lot of weeks, but just to come out firing in week 1, love to see that. My third viewpoint here, shout out to Riverdale. Big win against Mendota. Obviously, our buddy Stock fired up about that. He's calling for playoffs there.
He is very fired up.
Very fired up. And again, we'll dive into that a little bit more. But congratulations to Guy Derricks and that entire program. Certainly have been in the valley and now starting to come out of it. So kudos to Riverdale.
Well, I'll kind of piggyback off that last viewpoint, and I'll give some shout out to West Carroll, also snapping a losing streak there.
Yeah.
Abelardo Ceseda getting the win for the Thunder, their debut in 8-man football. They were at home. That had to have been an exciting atmosphere.
Yeah, not to steal your viewpoints here, but for anyone who maybe is younger and not familiar with the old years of Savannah football, there was some tough times in that area. Historically, in that Mount Carroll, Savannah area, tough times on the football field. So yeah, this is a whole new thing, 8-man with the Thunder. Great to see them have a big win. Not only win, they looked good as they start off this 8-man journey.
Absolutely. My next viewpoint, Mitch, you remember the old quote, "They are who we thought they were." Was that was it Dennis Green, who was the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals when they played the Bears in 2006? Anyway, they are who we thought they were. I'm talking Anawan Weathersfield, Princeton, Quincy, Farmington, Lena Winslow, teams that we know, that we expected a lot of, and they delivered. They won some games pretty handily, pretty convincingly in most cases. So I'll segue into Lena Winslow is still Lena Winslow. We'll talk about the game. We'll break it down a little bit against Morrison. This Morrison team, they're going to find their wins this year. I'm sure of it. They got a ton of talent on the field. But man, every year we look at the names on this Lena Winslow roster and we look at who they lost and, we look at what they got coming back and it's still Lena Winslow, so we'll get into it in a little bit, but they looked impressive. They're going to be right there in the mix once again for not just the conference, but I think looking down the road in the 1A playoffs. So, all right. Well, should we get into the big schools, get into the Western Big Six? Some tough non-conference games, but we'll start with Moline getting the win over Rockwood Summit, 41-40. Summit trailed 34-21 with 3 minutes left, but scored 2 late touchdowns. The second one tied the game with 32 seconds left. The Maroons blocked the extra point to send it to overtime. Summit scored initially, missed the extra point. Colin Fredrickson then ran it into the end zone for the Maroons to tie it up. Then kicker Nolan Ducey, who had missed a couple extra points. But hey, let's focus on the positive here. He connects on the game winner, so he becomes the last second hero. The extra point's good. Moline wins that one. Great effort here from this Maroon team to start the season against a Rockwood Summit team that I think that's a pretty good program coming in.
Yeah, tight game early. Rocky starts to pull away a little bit, then Summit comes back. It's everything that you kind of want in a in a football game, especially a week 1 football game. And look, it's the little things, right? You saw it a lot in this game. It's special teams. We're talking about plays that only count for a point, but in the end, count for a lot more than that. So, yeah, for Nolan Ducey to come in and maybe not have his best game here, and under immense pressure to come in and kick the game-winning extra point in overtime. Awesome to see. The celebration was great. Grant Dahlstrom has some great videos of that. Also, their coverage of this game was excellent. So we didn't know what Rockwood Summit was going to bring. We knew that they were really, really good in Missouri. We just, it's not always apples to apples. So for Moline to get this win, obviously a formidable opponent. Great start for the Maroons.
Yep. And shout out to QC Sportsnet, as you mentioned, Grant Dahlstrom on the call there, but also they do a little write-up, a little, online article to, give the description of the game. So we really appreciate what QC Sportsnet does. You can catch every game live on Friday nights from Moline, Rock Island, and United Township. So great effort from them. Speaking of great effort, Eli Warren led the Maroons rushing attack with 136 yards and 2 scores. Fredrickson finished with 2 touchdowns. Elijah Taylor threw for 108 yards and a score. Adrian Cooper made a huge defensive play, returning a fumble in the 4th quarter for a touchdown. So a lot of names there that we, called out early in the season as names to watch, and they delivered here for Moline in a great game.
Yeah, it sure was. And what a better way to kind of kick off what we're going to be doing this year, a new segment. We'll be selecting a game of the week every year this season, Greg. And I would say that each winner will maybe go into a pool when we do the season end kind of games of the year. Certainly we'll have more than one game of the year candidate per week, but we will be selecting a game of the week. I think this game is pretty well awarding of that honor. So Moline gets our game of the week. View from the West game of the week is sponsored by Nate Neighbor of Modern Women of America. From protection to saving to retirement, contact Nate Neighbor today to put together your financial game plan. He's always just a call away at 309-233-2656. Modern Woodmen, touching lives, securing futures.
All right, moving along. Quincy gets the win, 40-12 over Quincy Notre Dame. The Blue Devils built a 20-12 lead at the half. They added 20 more in the 3rd quarter. And Mitch, stop me if you've heard this before. Braden Little had a huge game. Great way to start his season. Give us the numbers. Give us the breakdown here.
Yeah, no doubt. Braden Little, 368 yards, 5 touchdowns, add in another rushing one just for good measure. Broke his own school record. He had 27 completions on the night. So, I mean, this is just, we've talked about it. We've talked about, where he can land on the IHSA record books lists for a couple different categories if he continues to have nights like this. So great start for him. Dreas Rice, 93 yards on the ground as part of that balanced attack. It almost seems kind of like this was a mirror of last year. I thought Quincy Notre Dame kept it close last year. We've mentioned that we'd like Quincy Notre Dame as a team this year and their prospects of being a good 2A squad. Kept it close with a very, very good Quincy team before all of their weapons and all of their talent kind of just played out. So great effort by Quincy Notre Dame early. In the end, it's Quincy as it has been for a while.
Yep, it was Braden Little throwing to, the usual suspects, Tykel Hammers, Caden Johansson, but you also had Dreas Rice running for 93 yards. So solid effort all the way around for the Blue Devils. Mitch, I saw a little chatter on X it might have been earlier in the week, not Friday night, but I don't know. Maybe word is that this may be the last time that Quincy and QND meet. I don't know if they have a
Ooh,
long-term deal
hate
in place.
that.
I know we just praised how much we love that this game happens every year. So I hope it does. I hope it continues. I hope it was just, some
Yeah.
social media rumor and chatter, but I hope this game continues because it's great. There's not enough rivalries like this. And I know it's kind of a differential, enrollment differential is pretty significant, but just to have that familiarity and, that
Hmm.
rivalry in town, I think is great. So I hope it lasts. Keeping moving down the list here. LaSalle Peru gets the 18-16 win over United Township. Tough loss here for UT. We talked about this being kind of an important game early in the year because you start looking down the rest of their schedule and where they could pick up wins along the way. This felt like an opportunity here, and they had their chances, but in the end, they fall short. It just, overall, tough way to start the season again for United Township.
Tough way to start, but they showed some fight, didn't they? I mean, this is a team that lost this game 34-14 last year. Um, and yeah, like you said, they had their chances. They were leading for a while in this game. Did experience being in that position with some new players factor into it? I don't know. I'm not going to go that far, but winning's hard. There's no question about that. But I liked what I saw from UT, that they were in it. They had a chance for a field goal there at the end, didn't go through. But again, to be in that position against a tough LaSalle Peru team, I think is a good sign as UT trends upwards here for 2024.
Yeah, and the bright spot for the Panthers, Isaiah Navarrete, name we called out last year, name we'll continue to call, led the way with 198 yards and 2 touchdowns. So
Yeah.
we talked about with some pieces missing this year from graduation, he was one of those foundational building blocks, and you really saw him perform well in this, week 1 game. I think he'll go a long way in helping this team, find success. So that's a
Yep.
positive to take away from this one. All right, some more non-conference action from the Western Big Six. Minooka travels to Rock Island. They get the win 49-14. The final score, looks a little lopsided, but Rocky went toe-to-toe with Minooka for most of the first half. Rock's quarterback, Javion Clark-Pugh, threw a 29-yard pass to Evan Ellis. He then had a pass to Elijah Venegas for a 22-yard touchdown. That would tie the game at 7 with 6 minutes left in the second quarter. So really, when you're looking at it through a quarter and a half of football, they're playing right with them. Venegas would end up with 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. So they tie it up at 7. Minooka answers with a sustained drive that goes to give them a 14-7 lead. Rocky then punted. On the next play, it's Minooka quarterback Zane Caves to tie Couch, 55-yard touchdown. That makes it 21-7. The Rock's next possession ends with a pick 6 with 5 seconds left. So then all of a sudden it goes from 7-7 to 28-7 at the half. So not the way the Rocks wanted it to go, but oh man, they were in it early.
Right. Yeah, it's just, Minooka caught fire at the right time. Got that touchdown, got a defensive stop, another long touchdown, and then a pick 6, like you said. So stuff like that's not going to happen every single game. Yeah, like what we saw from Rocky at the start. Javion Clark-Pugh, looks like he's going to continue to build upon the success he had last year, obviously with guys like Ellis and Venegas with him to kind of power that offense. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how they come out looking next week. They're going to play Dunlop next week, obviously a team that just beat Galesburg. So yeah, not the start, necessarily that Rocky may have wanted, but played well early. They just have to find ways to kind of sustain that over the course of the game.
Yep, we'll talk more about it in a minute, but their non-conference slate doesn't get much easier this week as they play Dunlap, who just won big. We'll talk about that in a second, but it's a tough non-conference schedule for Rock Island, like a lot of these schools in the Big Six. So we'll see if they can, use that early part of this game as a little positive building blocks. So, all right. Well, speaking of positive building blocks, Geneseo gets the win 48-0 over Chicago Comer in Coach Furlong's debut. Kai Weinzerl had 3 touchdowns as the Leafs get their first win of the season. Now, Mitch, what I thought was interesting here was, did you catch that Loyola and East St. Louis played on Saturday at Illinois State? So obviously we're talking East St. Louis and Loyola, two of the best programs in the state of Illinois going up against each other. Really cool non-conference game. But I saw Michael O'Brien from the Chicago Sun-Times was there.
Yep.
And he had a tweet, or he had a post on X saying that plenty of season left for Loyola with experience and talent. But if any football fans weren't already impressed by Kerry Grove's 2 state title wins against East St. Louis, tonight should put a little bit of that into perspective. So he's giving credit to how good Kerry Grove was able to game plan against an East St. Louis squad that's so high powered. And man, we reposted it, and I had to point out that the man behind that defensive effort is now on the sidelines in Geneseo and Coach Furlong. So I think Geneseo's in really good hands. They look good against, maybe a little bit of a lesser opponent here, but they looked really good. It's a great start for Geneseo.
Now, Greg, on the instant reacts, which was great, by the way, anyone who hasn't listened to that yet, go back and listen to the instant reacts from this week. Stocking had a great stat, as he always does, saying that since 1984, the Leafs are 39-0 over Chicago Public League teams. Now, after the instant reacts came out, the Twitter historians that are out there were quick to point out that Geneseo actually did, in fact, lose to Chicago Phillips in 2015. That was a playoff game.
In a game that I was at. I should have remembered that. I was there. So anyway.
Yeah. The Stock was quick to respond that his stat only included regular season games, but I don't imagine there are many instances outside of that one. But the great game for Geneseo. Just again, Comer might not be the biggest litmus test, but a good way to kind of see how your team looks in week one. And certainly with that defensive effort that defensive background that coach brings that you mentioned, putting a shot here in week one, maybe a sign of things to come here for the Leafs.
Yep. A couple more non-conference games to touch on. Metamora gets the win 28-9 over Sterling. Another game kind of similar to the Rock Island game that we talked about, where Sterling had their chances. So they had a long touchdown by Caden Phillips called back due to holding. The Golden Warriors also got the ball down to the 1-yard line at one point after a Quincy Moss catch and run, but they could not punch it in from the 1-yard line. They had to settle for a field goal. So, things here where they had their shots to keep it close, and just, Metamora proved to be just a little bit better on Friday night. They're a good program. There's no surprise there. Yeah. So Sterling falls a little bit short in this one in their opener.
Yeah, Quincy Moss finished with 113 yards receiving on 4 catches. Great night for him. Quarterback Drew Nettleton finished 13 of 26 for 208 yards. So, not the start that Sterling would have wanted. Metamora is a pretty tough team. So, how quickly can they rebound here, having to play Niles Notre Dame next week?
I think, you look at some positives here from the Golden Warriors. I think if you see Moss as that big, home run threat for them as a wide receiver, to pair up with Caden Phillips, who will play that slot type of position, be an athlete on the offensive side of the ball, and Drew Nettleton kind of leading the way at quarterback, there's pieces there, right? And there's, as this Golden Warrior team matures and gets more experience as the season goes, I think they'll find some wins there. This is a tough way to start. Like we said, Metamora is a good program. One more game to talk about. Dunlap gets the win 48-0 over Galesburg. So Galesburg looks to get back on track this week against Bartonville Limestone. So a tough way to start the season for Coach Hickey as he takes over as interim head coach for the Silver Streaks. But this week, maybe a better opportunity for a win against a Limestone team that's 0-1. So let's jump into the schedule. The week 2 slate for the Western Big Six. More non-conference games for them. United Township goes up against Chicago Noble. You have Geneseo goes on the road to Clinton, Wisconsin. There's an interesting matchup for you. Moline at Bennett Academy. Quincy takes on Alton. Rock Island goes up against Dunlap, and Sterling hosts Niles Notre Dame. So again, some pretty tough non-conference games here when you start talking about Dunlap now plays Rock Island, and they got that huge win. Niles Notre Dame is 1-0. They go up against Sterling, and Moline going on the road to Bennett Academy, who has historically had their number. So just the Western Big Six, they're going to be battle tested by the time they get through these couple weeks here.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of history repeating itself from last year. If you look at some of these teams, like United Township, for example, played LaSalle Peru in week 1 and lost, came back and played Chicago Noble in week 2 and beat them bad. So hopefully the Panthers have similar success this year. Look at Galesburg, lost week 1 last year to Dunlop, came back and beat Bartonville Limestone in week 2. Again, you're hoping for that same sort of success for the Streaks. And Moline, I think on the Instant Reacts, Stock had said Moline's never beat Bennett Academy. I can't believe that. So Bennett Academy, always a tough team. They're 1-0 on the season. And but we'll see if that dramatic win can kind of carry over into this week 2 for the Maroons.
Yeah, they have a chance to make a statement here. They can go 2-0 in these 2 non-conference games. That's a huge statement for Moline. I expect Quincy to be 2-0 when it's all said and done here. And then from there, it's, some teams with a test in front of them. So we'll see how these Western Big Six teams fare. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. We'll jump into the Three Rivers Athletic Conference.
The View from the West Player of the Week is brought to you by Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They offer name brands such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. You can check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or shoot Cal Breedlove an email at calbreedlove@gmail.com.
This is Dan Pearson of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Our FCA team of staff, board, and volunteers is pleased to support View from the West with Greg and Mitch. Our Northwest Illinois FCA team is 3 teams in 1, serving coaches and athletes in the Three Rivers, Northern Illinois, and Greater Peoria areas, all with schools covered by View from the West. For more information, email me at danpearson@fca.org. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
The Quad City's first and only fantasy football show, For Fantasy's Sake, has you all covered when it comes to all of your fantasy football needs. The guys come to you live every Sunday morning during the football season from 10 to 11:30. They've got the best analysis, rankings, DFS, and gambling advice between the Rock and Mississippi Rivers. So tune in to For Fantasy's Sake every Sunday during the football season from 10 to 11:30 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube.
Hey, this is Brett Bielma, the head coach of the Fighting Illini from Prophetstown, Illinois. You're listening to the View from the West podcast.
Welcome back to View from the West. Of course, everyone knows Mitch. You can find us on X, but I want to give a quick reminder. You can also follow along. Find us now on Instagram and on YouTube. That's the best place to find some clips from the show, but also some game highlights. We have some classic game footage from over the years. Just a lot of fun, a lot of good stuff out there. We'll continue to get the highlights up. Hopefully sooner than later, I'm going to get posted the highlights of the games I covered. Lena Winslow getting the win at Morrison and Fulton getting the big win against Forreston. So we'll get highlights out there every week of the games that I cover. So make sure to go check that out, follow, subscribe, do all the things. So, all right, let's jump into the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. Big win here for Erie Prophetstown. They win 13-6 on the road at Kewanee. Keegan Winkler, quarterback, had both of Erie Prophetstown's touchdowns. They led 13-0 at the half. Kewanee had several opportunities in this one, but failed to capitalize. Kind of a bizarre ending to this one, though. It was a tight game throughout, and Erie Prophetstown held on to a win just barely.
Yeah, you got that right. They got the ball back with about 6 minutes left, so trying to chew that clock and not give possession back. Certainly, there was a play late that EP fumbled. Kewanee nearly pounced on it, but Keegan Winkler was able to get it back. They were able to finally put the nail in the coffin. They converted a 4th and 5 on a pass to Dimitri Larson, sealed the win, big win for your EP Panthers, Greg.
I'm intrigued, man. I'm following along. I like Dimitri Larson, and Keegan Winkler showed up in the week 1. I think there's a lot to like there. We'll see how they fare. I got to give a shout out. One of my best friends, Matt, a Kewanee grad, a loyal listener to View from the West, by the way. He was back at his first Boilermaker game at his alma mater for the first time, he thinks, in 25 years. So he was back in town for a little class reunion. Of course, it was Hog Days. So you got to go check out Hog Days and check out the Boilermakers football team. So he didn't see a Boilermaker win, but he said it was fun to be back and, cheering from the bleachers.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
All right. One of the games that grabbed the headlines, Mitch, it was one of your viewpoints. Riverdale gets the 23-12 win over Mendota. Per Brian Stocking, of course, we default to his longtime historical statistics. The Rams win their first road game since 2019. Riverdale's first win over Mendota and their first win in an opener since 2017. So great effort here by the Rams. Great story to start the 2024 season.
Yeah, no question. Truth be told, when we were asked by Ty Taylor to predict this game in our weekly, collab with them, I didn't know. I truly didn't know what to make of either team coming into this year. Obviously, both teams had rough years last season, but you just never know. But for Riverdale and Stocking had a great story about seeing the kids at Tugfest and everything. It's clear that the Rams have improved. Great to kind of get this one out of the way, get one on their belt, control the ball, control the line on both sides. Very clear early on against Mendota. Marched down the field on their opening drive. Kane Beckett, Colton Cruz leading the way for that opening score. Beckett led all rushers, 151 yards on 15 carries, about 10 yards a clip. And a touchdown. Cruz had a pair as well. And as I mentioned in the open, great for Guy Derricks. Obviously, he's doing this at his alma mater, having had similar success at Davenport
North. At Davenport North, yep. Mm-hmm.
Davenport North, and then Louisa Muscatine before then.
Yep.
So finally made the jump to the good side to Illinois, back at his alma mater. So, yeah, good to see this. Good to see this momentum build for Riverdale, and good to have them back in the win column.
What I think is really interesting is when you look at what kind of led the way for them, what was the difference? And from what I read and what I heard, it was line play on both sides of the ball. So, a lot of teams, you're going to have some athletes, you're going to have some weapons there offensively, some skill players. But if you can really establish yourself up front, I think that's what will really make the difference. And it did. And it did on Friday night. So I'm interested to see how that continues to play out for them. Yep. So great win there, like you said, for Guy Derricks and the Rams. Another big-time win. Monmouth Roseville gets the win 50-14 over Mercer County. Kind of weird game the way this one played out.
Yeah.
My Titans trailed 8-6 at half, scored 32 unanswered in the third quarter to run away with this one. Peyton Thompson, 143 yards, 2 touchdowns. He added 2 interceptions on defense. Elliott Rogers had 2 more interceptions as part of a great defensive effort from the Titans. Man, they looked good in that second half. It was, a weird start to it. I think, Mercer County had a good game plan going in, but ultimately it was this Monmouth Roseville team that came away with a big win.
Yeah. So in my Friday night navigation of trying to, go from game to game, turned on to WRMJ, listened to Ty call this game, and I was listening to it in the first half, and I listened to Mirko score, and then I was getting ready to go out of town early Saturday morning, so I was doing things around the house, came back to the game, I don't know, half hour later, and they had just scored their 32nd point of the quarter, and I'm just like, I missed quite a bit here when not listening to the game. So Ty called a pretty exciting game there, certainly exciting third quarter. Certainly didn't look like the Monroes that we expect this year. They're in that first half, but I think that second half Titan team is who we expect to see moving forward.
So, Mitch, like we mentioned, Peyton Thompson had a great game on the ground with a couple touchdowns. Quarterback Andy Myers had a couple rushing touchdowns. Did you see the stat, Mitch, from the Monmouth Roseville Titans?
0 pass attempts here.
0 pass attempts. I think we have a new t-shirt inspiration here from Coach Adolphson and the Titans. How about no pass, no problem?
Yeah, a couple teams could live by that mantra for sure.
Yeah.
One team that normally does it, that we'll get into, that showed a little different look on Friday, but yeah, we are blessed to have a couple teams that live by that mantra. So
Yeah.
yeah, sure, throw it on a shirt.
All right, keep moving our way through the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. Princeton gets the win 28-14 over Newman. Tigers' quest for 7 straight Rock Crowns started off with a cross-division win over Newman. Touchdowns by Alex Wynn, Will Lott, Ace Christensen, and Casey Etheridge led the way. Second quarter, touchdown from Newman's Briar Ivy just before halftime was the first touchdown scored for the Comets in the previous 3.5 games against the Tigers. So, they were able to get a little positive momentum here, but ultimately, I think Princeton was pretty comfortable in this one the entire way.
Shout out to Kevin Hieronymus from the Bureau County Republican for that stat. He was at the game as always. This Tiger defense was stout. Listen to this, Greg. Couldn't tell you when the last time this happened was. They held the Comets to negative 39 yards rushing.
Oh my gosh.
Pair of interceptions, fumble recovery, so that Princeton defense is still as stellar as we thought it would be. Coach Pearson, in his comments after the game to Kevin, they weren't happy with this performance. A win's a win, that's for sure, but they weren't happy. They're looking for more. Boy, do they have an opportunity to do that next week playing Rock Ridge. So can't wait for that one. We'll get into that later. But for Princeton, like you said, the quest for 7 straight titles, got to win to do that, and they certainly did on this one.
Yeah, I think you start to see it over the years. We've seen and heard comments like that from Coach Pearson, and I get it, right? When you're a program at the level Princeton's at, you can't settle. You got to be pushing, you got to be driving, you got to be looking for something better at all times. And I think a comfortable win, a win's a win, but yeah, maybe there's more out there, and they certainly have an opportunity this next week to really make a statement against a good Rock Ridge team. We'll get into the Rock Ridge Rockets. They kick off the season, the 24 season, with a 42-6 win over Sherrard. What a way to start the season for quarterback Cullen Schweigen. 323 all-purpose yards, 6 touchdowns, 196 yards passing, 127 yards rushing. So what an effort from him and the Rockets.
Yep.
We were talking, via text, and I think it was about every 5 minutes, I was seeing a new text that Schweigen scored again. Schweigen threw a touchdown pass. Schweigen ran it in. It just was nonstop there in about those first 15 minutes.
Yeah, I expect a lot of that this year, to be honest with you. Great play from Cullen. Just again, building off of what all he did in his great first year last year as a freshman. So this is a great win for Rock Ridge. We had some questions on Rock Ridge, right? I still predict them to win the division because I think they have all the pieces, but you just never know, right? You graduate a lot of great players. There's big pieces that you have to replace, but boy, great games from Trevor Dye, Landon Wheatley, Owen Steele. Plenty of weapons remain on this Rock Ridge team. Obviously, the defense is still great. And as we just mentioned in the Princeton game, huge game next week with Princeton and Rock Ridge. Obviously, the two multi-year defending champions of their respective divisions. And they'll go toe-to-toe here in week 2.
So a great effort from a lot of different Rockets. But Mitch, no one stands out more in this one than quarterback Cullen Schweigen. We talked about his 6 touchdown effort, and I think that's where we're shipping our first helmet of the year, our Breedlove's Player of the Week, quarterback Cullen Schweigen from the Rock Ridge Rockets. So congratulations to Cullen. The Schweigen family has been loyal supporters and listeners of View from the West podcast for several years. Before Cullen was even in high school, they were telling us they were listening every week. So we love it. We appreciate their support, and great effort from Cullen this week. He's going to have a helmet sitting there on the mantle somewhere in their household.
Yeah. A lot of great performances this week, as we mentioned, but for Cullen to come out in a game against Sherrard and to put up those numbers, a balanced attack, like you said, 196 through the air, 127 on the ground. Just it's a really hard thing to plan for when you have a dual threat kid like that. So yeah, congrats to Cullen, and a very worthy recipient of the Breedlove's Player of the Week. We'll call it a trophy, right? Sure.
The helmet trophy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you again to our sponsor for Breedlove's for helping us out with that. They'll get the helmet shipped shipped out there every week. So it's very exciting. All right, couple more games in the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. Actually, just one more game in the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. Orion gets the win 42-14 over Spring Valley Hall. Mitch talked about great starts for the different teams, different quarterbacks. How about Orion and Cale Filler? A great start there for the Chargers.
Absolutely. This is a really tight game last year, so this was just a completely different look from Orion. But boy, it started off right away. Owen Voorhees returns the opening kickoff for a touchdown. Just a great way to start the season, right? Listening to Sportsline interview with Coach Filler. We were interested to hear that Chip noticed the way that the Hall kicker was booting them these kicks high into the air in his pregame warmups. And I mean, that's a coach, right? You're looking for any little advantage you can find, and to see it in the hang time of a pregame warm-up kick. And look what happened. That's exactly why you do that. So he saw something that he liked, mentioned it to the assistant. If Voorhees were to get it, he thinks he could return it for a touchdown. Sure enough, it happened exactly that way. So good on Coach Filler to spot that in pregame, and good on Voorhees on making his coach look like Nostradamus there.
Whatever he saw, the way he was kicking, and if Voorhees got the ball, he thought he was fast enough to get around him, to outrun him. And it's exactly the way it played out.
Well,
you can't ask for a better start.
And shout out to the other 10 guys on that field, though, too, blocking, making the holes, make sure Voorhees can get through them. So it's a full effort there, no question.
Absolutely. So a great start there on special teams, but the offense also off and running for the Chargers. They finished with 413 total yards. Cale Filler, 315 yards with a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown. Aiden Fisher also had 3 touchdowns, and we talked about him being a possible difference maker when people really focus on the passing game. It might open some lanes for him. It did in this one, at least into the end zone.
Yeah, no question. In that same interview, Filler mentioned that thought his team slowed down a little bit in the second half, kind of lost that burst. Certainly, it's week one. You have to have that hot start. Sometimes it's hard to keep the momentum going, but hoping that the stamina will come through as the season progresses for Orion. So they don't have much time to rest, though, hosting a big game here in week 2 that we'll get into.
Yeah, here we go. Let's get into it. Kewanee will go on the road to Riverdale. Mendota will be at Newman on Saturday. Monmouth Roseville at Orion. Princeton at Rock Ridge. Huge game there. Another big game, Sherrard at Mercer County. Hall at Erie Prophetstown. So the Three Rivers never lacks for intriguing matchups, because it's, these crossover games, it's a lot of rivalries and a lot of really important football being played here.
Yeah, no question. I one of my viewpoints was having more questions than answers. I looked directly at Kewanee at Fort Byron, right? How good is Riverdale, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that I'm drinking the Kool-Aid that Stock is just yet, but I might be if they beat Kewanee at home. But also on the flip side, is Kewanee, are they better than they were in week 1, and how much better than that? So I think that game is intriguing, but I mean, my eyes directly go to Princeton at Rock Ridge as 2 of the best teams that I think we cover. Won't matter for their respective divisions, but maybe as a king of the track this year, that could be settled on Friday night.
Yeah, I would think so. I think that's the 2 teams coming in that were the most, hyped in the preseason, for good reason, right? They've proven it over the years. That's a very interesting matchup out there at Rock Ridge. Sherrard at Mercer County becomes pivotal, right? For one of these teams, if they want to make a playoff push, I think starting 0-2 with what the schedule down the road will be becomes challenging. Not impossible, but it does become challenging. I think Sherrard's a little banged up, and I heard that Mercer County might have some key injuries as well. So I don't want to speculate on who's out, who's in, but there are some guys that were, banged up on Friday night. So it's a big game, either way. Both teams really need a rebound here.
Yeah, and I'm interested too in Monroe's at Orion. Can Orion kind of have that success on offense against a really good Titan team, and can they slow down a really good Titan offense? So again, one of those situations, like, okay, you win week 1. This is true for both teams. You win week 1. Are you for real going into week 2? So As you mentioned, all these crossover games in the track are fun to watch, and maybe we'll get some more answers here. But exciting stuff coming up.
I'm looking at a chance for Erie Prophetstown to be 2-0. They're hosting Hall, who, lost, week one. They're still trying to find their identity. I think there's an opportunity there for a big opportunity for Erie Prophetstown. One thing I do want to give a shout out, really cool note about the Sherrard Mercer County game is that John Hoshite, who retired as a longtime owner and the man behind WRMJ Radio, is coming back for one final broadcast.
Yeah.
He'll be on play-by-play along with Chuck Clausen and Bill Breeden, I believe, are the two color commentator and sideline reporter, longtime, broadcasters for when it was Alito, when it was, then Alito Westmer, and now Mercer County. So excited to hear John Hoshite on the radio airwaves one more time before Ty Taylor steps into the seat for the rest of the year. But just kind of a cool little, one last go at it. I think he's excited that it's a Mercer County Sherrard, two teams that are really close by, haven't played each other in a long time. So great to renew that rivalry. And so kind of a special night there. So yeah,
no doubt.
I'm interested to see how all these games play out. So, all right, let's get into the Lincoln Land Conference, the large school side of things. Farmington gets the win over Illini West, 33-0. Farmers roll up 444 yards of total offense, thanks in part to Lane Wheelwright's 277 yards passing. Wheelwright tosses 3 touchdown scores, and Logan Utt added 78 yards on the ground. So overall, Mitch, they are who we thought they were. Farmington looks great in week 1.
Yeah, this is a great win for them. Just continuing what they did last year as we expected them to. So great performance from Wheelwright, Logan Utt, as you mentioned. So, show just goes on there in Farmington.
Let's keep reading down the list here. Elmwood Brimfield gets the win, 41-28. Now, Mitch, I have an apology to make here to you and to our loyal contingent of Elmwood Brimfield fans listening. So in the instant react, now, Mitch, you had texted me earlier in the night about, as we're just going back and forth, a stream of consciousness, you're sending me score updates, and you said, you referenced something about Elmwood Brimfield. And I'll be honest, like, I was walking in or out or doing something. I kind of half read it, and I kept moving along. We get to the instant reacts, and Brian Stocking says Knoxville wins 41-28. And if you listen, I even asked him, I double checked, like, oh, Knoxville got the win. And he confirmed, he doubled down. Yes, they did. And then after I got done and we start editing, and I realized, Mitch tried to tell me it was Elmwood Brimfield who got the win. So Mitch, my apologies. I let you down.
I feel like I have to work for ServPro cleaning up this mess. I mean, come on, guys. We've been doing this for years, and these are some week 1 mistakes. But hey, we'll let it slide. What I hear, I think Guy Dierks posted something that the highlight zone said that Mendota had won or something. So look, it happens. It's all good. But I tried to tell you. I tried to tell you.
I know. All right. Well, give us the rundown here. What do we need to know about the Elmwood Brimfield win?
Yeah, this is a great win for the Trojans. 3 running backs each crossed over the 100-yard mark against Knoxville. Bo Windish ran for 184 yards and 3 touchdowns. Great performance from him. Matthew Glenn, 111 yards and 2 touchdowns on 19 carries. And Landon Klein finished with 108 yards and a touchdown. So, boy, the Trojans kind of giving Knoxville a taste of their own medicine here, just running all over the field. Great win for Elmwood Brimfield. This was a big game that we had talked about. If they can get past Knoxville, their season outlook looks even more clear. So a great start for the Trojans.
We're going to say this several times in this episode. This Knoxville team is going to find some wins on their schedule. I don't think it's certainly, nothing to panic about here, because I think that Elmwood Brimfield is a good team and they're primed for a good season here. Can one of those teams compete with Farmington? I think that becomes the question. I think Farmington's they're the big dog in the conference. They're they're defending champions for a reason. It's going to get interesting as these matchups play out to see where everyone fits in exactly in this LLC large side. Speaking of where teams fit in this LLC, how about Bureau Valley? Their first game in the Lincoln Land Conference, they get the win 48-21 over United. Senior Elijah Endrish led the Storm with 186 yards. He scored 3 straight touchdowns in the second half. So great effort from him and this experienced Storm team coming in, and they look ready to kind of make that next step. Is the Storm a playoff team possibly? That's, I think, what we're looking at. That's what they're aiming for.
Certainly what they're aiming for, certainly have the experience to do it. When we talked on the preview pod, when they play some of these bigger teams, it's just we'll have to let it all play out on the field, because I just don't know how they match up with some of these larger teams. But that's why you get on the field, right? That's why you strap on the helmet. So this was a great win in Bureau Valley's debut. 350 yards on the ground. Great games from Endress and that whole team. So yeah, like you mentioned, great team, great start for Bureau Valley.
Brady Hart scored 2 touchdowns, rushing for 94 yards. Did you already mention as a team they ran for 350 yards on the ground?
Yeah, great performance from the Storm.
Yep. All right, a couple more games here. Macomb starts their season off well against Lewistown. They win 49-8. So the Bombers, another team I think we need to be watching for at or near the top of this conference, because I think they got a lot of experience and they're ready to make a move here. You also have West Hancock going on the road, but falling to DMAC 58-28. Senior running back Mac Eccles ran for 169 yards and 4 touchdowns for Deer Creek Mackinac. So great effort from him, and a big win for DMAC. Not the start that West Hancock was hoping for, but they'll jump into conference play here soon enough and see if they can get things corrected. Let's get into week 2 matchups. Illini West takes on Elmwood Brimfield. Farmington takes on West Hancock. So West Hancock, they got to jump in. They got to eliminate week 1 and get it out of their brain and move into Farmington now. They'll be at home for that one. Knoxville goes on the road to Macomb. Lewiston takes on Rova Williamsfield. And Bureau Valley, in a non-conference game, goes on the road to Ridgeview Lexington. What stands out to you here, Mitch, in these games?
Knoxville and Macomb, I think. Again, 2 teams that maybe had performances in week 1. I don't want to say I didn't expect Macomb to win, because I believed that. But is that their identity? Are they that dominant of a team? And is Farmington, can they rebound? They have to. To be 0-2, boy, that would be tough sledding for Knoxville with a lot of big time games still left on their schedule. Outside of that, I do want to see how Bureau Valley stacks up against Ridgeview Lexington. Historically, the Mustangs are a really good team. 0-1 on the year. I don't think they were as strong last year, but historically they have been. They were a 1A player a couple of years ago. I think they had that quarterfinal game against Lena Winslow. So yeah, can Bureau Valley get to 2-0? Boy, what a start that would be.
Yeah, that was a game that kind of caught my eye too. And man, Elmwood Brimfield and Illini West. Illini West had to go up against Farmington in week 1. So it's kind of hard to learn kind of what they are in week 1. I think this will be more telling. If they can compete and, hang with Elmwood Brimfield, if they came away with a win, obviously it's huge. But, Elmwood Brimfield looked really good in week 1. Can they maintain that, momentum in this one? That's a game I'm looking at. So, and Rova Williamsfield, we'll talk about them in a minute. They came away with a dramatic win in week 1. Can they continue that against an 0-1 Lewiston team? So they'd be potentially, 2-0 as well. So that's a good segue. Let's get into the Lincoln Land small schools. Anawan Wethersfield, again, Mitch, they are who we thought they were. Anawan Wethersfield, 42-0 over South Fulton. Give us the rundown from the Titans.
Yeah, the name that we call a lot whenever we're talking about Anawan Wethersfield. Zeb Rashid, 121 yards on the ground. I'm going to pivot to the defense, Greg. This is the 8th time in their last 13 games that the Titan defense has allowed 6 points or less. Obviously, that dates back to last year, but boy, it's hard to score on this Titan team. So when you got those offensive weapons that they do and that stout defense, we're going to learn more about Anawan Wethersfield this week against Stark County, who I thought looked great in week 1. But for the moment, Anawan Wethersfield continues to roll.
Yeah, Anawan Wethersfield looked good in that one. How about Rova Williamsfield? The game we mentioned earlier, they get the win 42-36 over Havana. Dramatic win here, back and forth battle, tied with under a minute left. Rova Williamsfield scores on a 4th and 10 from the 18. They then had an interception with 3 seconds left to seal the win. It's dramatic. It's a dramatic win for a Havana team that struggled a year ago, but hey, you got to get in the win column. That's a great way to start for the Cougars.
And this is the game that I think exemplifies there's more questions than answers, right? Havana was 0-9 last year, didn't have a great year the year before, and they're playing tough against a Robert Williamsfield team that has some new weapons this year. Certainly, they're going to try and figure some things out. They're working through that. But I saw this. I was trying to find scores. I was on I don't think they call it the score zone anymore, and I should say, but I saw that. And I screenshotted and tweeted it out. I said, like, what's going on here? Like, who's got an update? And that's when we learned that they had won, and not only that they won, but they had won on a 4th down. So yeah, questions for both teams. How much better has Havana gotten? Or has Robert Williamsfield taken a step back? I'm not quite there yet to say that. So I'll give that to Havana, maybe playing really well. But yeah, you got to win these games, and however you do it. So good for Robert Williamsfield to walk away with this close win.
Yeah, we said there's an opportunity this season for the Cougars. The way their schedule shakes out, they could really make a statement early in the year. So far, so good. You're 1-0. There's an opportunity this week to move to 2-0.
Yeah.
So
that's what I was going to say. They'll most likely be 2-0 after this week, and all will be forgotten. But
yep.
Yeah, I mean, great win, no doubt.
So Jack Cordell led the way for them, 214 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns, 21 yards receiving, and another touchdown. So great effort from him, and he'll be a player to watch down the way for the Cougars as they move along. Princeville gets the win 38-12 over Abingdon Avon. Princes jumped out to a 22-0 lead at the half, never looked back. Jack Lead, 145 yards, 3 touchdowns for the Princes. A-Town's Drew Anderson, a bright spot for the Tornadoes, 199 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 rushing touchdown. So this A-Town team may be going to the air a little more often. That'll be something to follow along with. But hey, Princeville looking good here offensively, and we got some stats. So shout out to I think Brian reached out to us and said he would share some stats with us. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, their X account, Twitter account is more active this year with scores. So we like that. It's always hard to get updates from Princeville. So, we just keep knocking on that door, and we finally maybe breaking in somewhere, Greg. So, but as Princeville, as we've said before, every year they are just a tough team to figure out and play against. They're always, sitting at around 500. And so it's just a tough team to get around. So yeah, Princeville wins this one big, 38-12. And who do they got next week? They've got Havana. So we'll learn more about both teams, about Princeville and Havana next week, or this week, I should say.
Certainly will. Last but not least, Stark County gets the win 27-6 over Rushville Industry. Mitch, this score caught my eye because we heard a lot about Rushville Industry and kind of the young talent they had from the JV level getting moved up. And this seemed like a year they'd been building towards. And what would happen here, because Stark County had some guys back, but certainly, they got to answer. They got to come up with, new names to fill in what they lost. Right. And they looked the part here in week 1. Great effort, I would say, especially defensively, holding this Rushville Industry team to just 6 points. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Great win here for the Rebels.
Yeah, as promising as we might think that Rushville Industry is, hard to play week 1 against the defending champs, right? The defending conference champs. Yeah. So, and as you mentioned, there might be some new names, but we've got some returning guys there for the Rebels. Nolan Orway, great game. TDs in the first half, built that early lead. Dylan Steelman ran for a couple more in the second half. But yeah, as you mentioned, that defense, that Stark County defense, Chris Barnwell, a name that we talked about a lot last year, 15 tackles.
Yeah.
Cole Kinsella, 7 more tackles. So might be tough for opponents to score on the Rebels this year. But again, we're gonna find that out with a pretty formidable offensive team in Anawan Wethersfield coming to Stark County this week.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, that's a huge game, no doubt about it. Let's jump into the week 2 matchups. A-Town at South Fulton. Havana takes on Princeville. United at Rushville Industry. So a challenge there for Rushville Industry to bounce back, but also for United to see if they can bounce back as well. 2 0-1 teams. But the big one, Anawan Wethersfield at Stark County. I think that's the game we got to talk about, Mitch. That one grabs the headlines here It's Zeb Rashid, and it's what they do offensively against this Stark County defense, which looks really good. But on the flip side, that Anawan Weathersfield defense looked really good, like you talked about. Can Stark County find some holes in there through their rushing game to make an impact? It's going to be a great one.
Well, you were at that game last year, right? The
Yep.
21-20 win for
Yep.
Stark County. So, yeah, I expect another close game this year. And this, again, it's week 2. It's going to pay. It's going to pay dividends for whoever wins down the road, because I think this is one of those games that determines who will walk away with this crown, even though it's week 2.
Well, I think last year maybe Stark County kind of not snuck up on us, but I think leading into the season, it was Roval Williamsfield and Anawan Weathersfield were the 2 teams we talked a lot about, and it was Stark County having to prove something. I think this year, I think both teams, Stark County and Anawan Weathersfield, both very much on our radar. They're not, they still have to prove it, but they're very much now on our radar, and they're, going toe to toe with the best teams in the conference, obviously being the defending champ.
I think so too. Boy, we got a lot, and we'll kind of maybe recap this at the end. We got a lot of really good conference matchups in week 2 across all the conferences that we cover. That again, we might look at the end of the year and say, "Whoa, that kind of set the tone."
This episode of View from the West podcast is brought to you by Simulation Sports. In addition to golf simulators and batting cages, Simulation Sports provides golf club repair, custom fittings for driver shafts, and even private lessons for golf, baseball, and softball. Whether you're looking for a fun group activity or want to fine-tune your skills and equipment, Simulation Sports has something for everyone. Visit their facility at 400 South Main Street in Monmouth, Illinois, or go to thesimulationsports.com to start playing today.
Shouldn't financial advice focus on you? I can help you plan for your financial future, from protection to saving to retirement. I'm Nate Neighbor, your Modern Woodman representative. Call me at 309-233-2656 or find me on the Modern Woodman website.
Get to know your local Modern Woodman representative to plan for your financial future and learn about valuable member benefits. Modern Woodman of America. Touching lives, securing futures. Securities offered through MWA Financial Services, Inc., a wholly owned subsidiary of Modern Woodman of America.
View from the West podcast is also sponsored by the Cupcake Cartel. Gourmet cupcakes that are made to order. Over 40 flavors, including wedding cake, lemon blueberry, strawberry milkshake, snickerdoodle, and Oreo. Perfect for weddings, birthdays, showers, fundraisers, or any event. You can find the Cupcake Cartel on Facebook. We thank them for their support.
All right, let's get into the Northwest Upstate Illini. Mitch, the big game, the game that grabbed a lot of the headlines coming into week 1 was the Morrison Mustangs stepping into a new conference, the NUIC, against Lena Winslow, the perennial power, right? Whether they're winning the conference or they're winning a state championship, some years they're doing both. So they're the powerhouse. They go up against Morrison, and man, Morrison carries the headlines as far as a high-powered offense. Lena Winslow led the way defensively here, getting a 32-6 win. It was a great game. It was a great atmosphere. But man, Lena Winslow, they just continue year in and year out to be a powerful force.
Yeah, and you were there for the first half, and you guys and Kyle had a great recap on the instant reacts that, Morrison had their chances. I don't think that they were necessarily overpowered by much. Just some things, some breaks didn't go their way, and you can't do that against a team like Lena Winslow. Certainly some conditioning concerns there. A lot of guys on Morrison cramping up. So in the end, as you mentioned, this is just Lee Win. This is what they do. This is exactly what they do. And we were interested to see if it would continue on against a good Morrison team. Would have loved to see this game last year in the playoffs. Had Morrison beaten in Weathersfield. But not only did the helmet news just knock my socks off, but then you have 2 passing touchdowns from Lena Winslow in the first quarter. I could not believe my eyes.
You are thrown way off here. Morrison debuts a new helmet, then Lena Winslow's passing for touchdowns. You just could could not figure out what world we were living on.
I'm in an alternate universe for sure on this one. But hey, you know what? Quarterback Cash Lessman connected with Alex Schlichting, Miles Mann, 2 first quarter touchdown passes. They converted both of their 2-point conversions as they normally do. Morrison would add a score late, kind of broke into that game a little bit.
I will
Go
say
ahead.
this was the turning point, that Morrison was down 16-0.
Yeah.
And Lena Winslow was driving in the third quarter. They get it down to about the 5-yard line. They look like they're about to punch it in again, which would put them up 3 scores. And you really think, okay, like this is going to end the game. Sure enough, as soon as you start to think that, Lena Winslow puts the ball on the turf. Morrison scoops it up. Rylan Alvarado scoops it up. Next play, or a few plays later, he goes for about 60-some yards to set Morrison up. Then they have a pass completion, and then Bielema runs it in himself. Colton Bielema runs in the touchdown for the quarterback keeper, and it's then 16-6. And it felt like, okay, like you're still down 10, but you're at least in it, right? You at least have some momentum. And then, man, immediately, as soon as you think that, Jalen Rakowska for Lena Winslow shows off speed of his own, gets around the corner, goes 80 yards as time expires on the third quarter. It was a great run. I got it. I'll have to post that up on our YouTube channel. A great highlight for Lena Winslow. And then that kind of felt like, all right, as soon as Morrison kind of had a little taste of momentum, man, this Lena Winslow squad answers, which is what great programs do, right? This is what they do.
Yeah. And we've talked a lot about in the past about Morrison's speed. We certainly mentioned their success on the track this past spring. But Lena Winslow's relay teams and their sprinters are football players as well. So there was a lot of speed on the field that you probably saw. Rakowska is one of those guys. Schlichting is another one of those guys who, they race probably against Brady Anderson multiple times of the year and at the state track meet. So, a lot of speed on the field there. That's my shout out to Coach Rickles there, coaching the youngsters up in Lena Winslow. So, and I mentioned too, that was his first time back coaching at Morrison. So a great night for him all around. He texted me on Saturday morning, but yeah, in the end, look, it's Lena's conference until someone takes it. And here comes this newcomer in Morrison, but you see the result and it's hard to think now that we'll get into some more games that, maybe a new contender rises a little faster to Lee Wynn's crown. But for now, still Lena Winslow's.
Looking at the running attack of Lena Winslow this season, if Alex Schlichting and Jalen Rakowska are kind of the lightning, watch out for the thunder that they have in Aiden Wild. Aiden Wild is a big body. He's been kind of moved from a tight end into a more fullback position. He looks like he could do some damage running through some tackles.
Yeah, you said it. The thunder, no question about that. Big body, agile guy. Another seemingly, superstar, we'll call it, from that fullback position for this Panther offense. So yeah, he was fun to watch, no question. He'll get the ball a lot and give this Panther offense just what's another weapon, right? Just reload and keep going.
Yep. So great showing for Lena Winslow. Defensively, I would say especially, but yeah, on the offensive side of the ball, they got some guys that can get the job done, and they have a quarterback in Lessman that I think can get the job done as well. So again, it's a broken record, but it's Lena Winslow. They're a team to watch, and they're a team that's going to be a very hard out for a lot of teams. So, hey, speaking of impressive starts here, Mitch, the Fulton Steamers, man, that steamboat was busy on Friday. They get the win 28-0 over Forreston. I think this game might have been kind of a toss-up game with two really good programs going against each other. It was a really good game. One of our Game of the Year candidates a year ago in week 1. I'm not surprised who won the game. I'm surprised the way they did it. To shut out Forreston, I think, is a statement win here.
Yeah, you guys were talking on the Instant Reacts, and Kyle was trying to find the last time that Forreston was shut out in week 1, and it was longer than he could find, and he was 25 years in at that point. So this one surprised me. It did. Not that Fulton won. I think I'm going to echo what you just said. I don't know that we predicted games for this week in the NUIC. I'm guessing I would have picked Fulton, but not this way. They they dominated on both sides of the ball. Forreston made some mistakes. Fulton certainly took advantage of that. You've got that great video of Don Kramer's touchdown on 4th down, synced up with the call. That's a great video.
I was just going to give a shout out to Tony Z from KCLN Radio. He does a great job calling Fulton Steamer games. I've been on his podcast, Tony Z and Friends, to give a little preview of the track and stuff. And so we caught up there, and yeah, he sent me the audio and I synced it up, and it's great. Really cool. Yep. Really nice run from Kramer. Just really impressive stuff.
Oh yeah. He was amped up too.
Yeah.
Speaking of speed, Braden Myers returned the opening kick of the second half, 85 yards to the house. So again, you don't shut out Forreston a lot. Certainly don't do it in week 1 based on history, but this is a great momentum building win for Fulton. And I just mentioned that there's some great week 2 games. Boy, Fulton and Lena Winslow here in week 2 is really going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, a few more games here down the way. Dupek gets the win, 32-26 over Stockton. A pair of touchdown passes from Cooper Hoffman to Jackson Dietrich in the 3rd quarter helped seal the win against a tough effort from Stockton. This was a game we were kind of monitoring, Kyle Kampmeyer and I, as we were walking the sidelines of Morrison, and Stockton hung around. They kept it close against the Dupek team in a program that we've been pretty impressed with over the years.
Yeah, Noah Larson for Stockton is a great quarterback. Can really get the ball downfield. Mark Detweiler, hard running there in the fullback position. But yeah, young team, very, very tough. They've got a strength coach and Randy Ash, who has seemingly got these guys in good shape to put up a fight against a really, really good and bigger, it's certainly when you talk about school classes, 3A and 1A here for Stockton, put up this fight against a really good Dupek team. I think changes my outlook on Stockton a little bit for the better. And that's fun to see. Fun to see the Blackhawks, one of IHSA's top 50 programs of all time, right? Kind of getting back into that sort of echelon of good football.
Yeah, awesome. Really cool to see them on the list. And obviously a ton of pride coming out of the Northwest Upstate Illini. That Stockton team,
still one of my favorite places ever to play. I've said it 100 times on this show. I love being there.
I love that is one of my favorite venues to shoot a high school football playoff game, especially when you get really late in the fall, the leaves are changing colors, and you're right there in that park in Stockton. Man, it is beautiful. I do love that place. Yep. Well, another game here that could have some playoff implications. Like you said, Stockton fighting for a playoff spot.
Mm-hmm.
Eastland Pearl City and Galena. I think they're going to be fighting for that 5-win mark or maybe a little more. And Eastland Pearl City gets the win 22-6 over Galena. This is one of those games, Mitch. It's an X factor game, right? It goes a long way for Eastland Pearl City to make a playoff push or make that 5-win push to get this win. Scoreless at halftime before the Wildcats pulled away. Jackson Kemple had a pair of rushing touchdowns. Jackson Corbin added another, but is there some discrepancy here?
Well, there's some discrepancy in the stats, so we're just going to credit both Jackson Corbin and Adam Adwinder as big-time pieces. One of them scored. But yeah, as you mentioned, this was a nice second-half effort from the Wildcats to pick up this win. And as you mentioned, it a much-needed win for one of these teams. EPC gets it. Now we'll see if they can do it again going on the road at Dupek in this week.
Yep. One more game here in the Northwest Upstate Illini. Dwight gets the non-conference win over Dakota, 49-0. Dakota held to just 67 yards in this one. They'll try to right their ship against Forreston in week 2. So let's get into the matchups here. Dakota at Forreston, like we referenced. Galena takes on Morrison. Eastland Pearl City at Dupek. Stockton goes on the road to Schulzburg, Wisconsin. But the big one, Mitch, you mentioned it before. Fulton looked really good. Lena Winslow impressed us. And now they battle against each other. If Fulton wants to take that really big step, that next leap in this conference, this is a potential statement game for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And they, if I remember correctly, Greg, they played Lena Winslow really tough in the first half last year.
Yes.
In their regular season game before Lena pulled away. And I expect a lot of the same here. Two teams with really good talent on both sides of the ball, just going at it. This will be great. At Lena Winslow, maybe gives them the edge, maybe a little bit.
Yep.
A tough environment there. But I liked what I saw from both squads. So maybe a too close to call type of thing. I might lean Lena Winslow here, but I'm really excited to see what Fulton can do against them.
Yeah, what I want to see is Lena Winslow's defense was really good against Morrison, but maybe Fulton is a little more balanced. Fulton has maybe a little more edge in throwing the ball and going to the air with Dom Kramer and some of those wide receivers. I really want to see if Fulton can find that good rhythm of keeping a Lena Winslow defense off balance with the mix of run and pass. Can that, gain a little traction for them? On the flip side, can Fulton's defense continue to play opportunistic? And, can they keep up with some of the thunder and lightning, which we referenced, on that offensive side of the ball for Lena Winslow?
Yep.
It's questions here that are going to be answered. And I think, we're going to learn a lot about the top of this conference potentially.
Yeah, I think so too. So outside of that, you got Galena and Morrison, both 0-1 teams. Both teams will. This is a old rivalry renewed. They would meet a lot of times in the past, whether it be in the playoffs or whatever it may be. So both of those teams looking for their first win. Don't know anything about Shullsburg, Wisconsin, but would love to see Stockton come away with a win, or at the very most continue to play well. And the EPC again, that you coming off a nice win against Galena. Can you challenge Dupec again, or will Dupec be the 2-0 team?
Yeah, it's a tough road test for Eastland Pearl City, but again, if they want to continue to prove themselves and up their standing in the conference, that would be a big win for them. So we wrap up this week with some 8-man football. And how about the state championship rematch between Amboy and Ridgewood? Amboy comes away with a 36-6 win. The Clippers rack up 356 rushing yards. Josh McKendry led the way with 129 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns, but he wasn't alone. This Amboy Clipper team, they're back. They look good, and they have some multiple weapons.
Yeah, 356 yards on the ground. Josh McKendry, Braden Klein, Quinn Loffelman, we mentioned a lot last year. This was a typical Amboy game, right? It looked a lot similar, maybe not as many points as they scored in the championship game, but just a similar performance that they had all season last year against a really good Ridgewood team that we expect to have a good season. These guys will meet again in a couple weeks, but this week 1 Amboy matchup looks exactly like the Clippers of old.
Yep, great start for the defending state champions there, and I don't think great start does justice for what Milledgeville did on Friday night. What word do you put to 80-8 final?
Man.
Milledgeville gets the win over Ashton Franklin Center. What a start for the Missiles. Micah Tom Smith, he did a little bit of everything here. Kickoff return for a touchdown, 2 punt return touchdowns, and a receiving touchdown for the Missiles. He was a guy we were watching for. We knew that he'd be stepping up, and man, he didn't waste any time in week 1.
No, not at all. Coach Robles got a pretty good weapon there, Micah Tom Smith. A kickoff return, 2 punt returns, and a receiving touchdown.
Yeah,
for the Missiles. So yeah, this was a pretty significant, I would say offensive display, but kind of an all-around performance, right? Offense, defense, special teams. So yeah, great win for the Missiles here in week 1 to get the season started off right.
Yep. Another big win here. Polo, the Marcos get the win 44-8 over South Beloit. Polo cruised to the win with Gus Mumford leading the way in the backfield, 140 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Noah Dewey and JT Stevenson at 100 yards. They also scored twice on the ground for Polo. So Noah Dewey's a name we've called out, but a couple names, then Gus Mumford, a new name here for us. So Polo's one of those teams that, Coach Alston has them year in and year out. They're going to be in the mix in 8-man football. How good are they? I think we're going to find out, but it's a good start for them for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Speaking of big wins, we said it at the beginning of the show. West Carroll, congrats to head coach Abelardo Ceseda getting the win for West Carroll, 64-14 over River Ridge, snapping a 24-game losing streak that dated back to 2019. So that had to be a great atmosphere out there. I mean, just like I said, being at home, getting that win, snapping the losing streak, maybe a sign of things to come here for the Thunder.
Yeah, this is great to see. As I mentioned during your viewpoints, there's been a long, tortured history of football in that area. So having this kind of new regime of not only new coach but new system and 8-man, obviously it's worked wonders for Amboy or whoever you want to mention who's made the jump from 11 to 8. But just to see West Carroll have that immediate success is great to see. Cool for the Thunder, good for that community, and yeah, congrats to everyone involved there for this nice win.
Couple more 8-man games to get to. Alden Hebron gets the win 36-22 over Orangeville. Wyatt Armburst led the Giants with 88 yards rushing on 19 attempts. Caleb Linneman added a pair of touchdown scores. So Alden Hebron gets the win there. West Central gets the big win 52-8 over Galva. Heat were led by Alex McGraw's 3 touchdowns. Cody Wade added a couple more. They combined for 250 yards rushing. So the West Central Heat grabbing the win. Mitch, they start their season as Road Warriors. They get their first wins. There you go.
They're definitely
4 more road games in a row now.
Right, definitely going to be Road Warriors by the end of week 4. That's for sure. So yeah, I saw this one. Great win for West Central.
Yep. All right, let's dive into week 2. See what we got here. Milledgeville goes on the road to Alden Hebron. Orangeville at South Beloit. Polo at River Ridge. Rockford Christian Life at Ashton Franklin Center. West Carroll on the road at Kirkland Hiawatha. Amboy goes to West Prairie on Saturday. West Central goes to Bushnell Prairie City on Saturday. Galva goes on the road to Ridgewood, and Peoria Heights at Flanagan Cornell Woodland. So I'm interested to see Milledgeville again. I want to see Polo go on the road to River Ridge. But how about Amboy, going on the road Saturday to West Prairie, see if they could keep rolling along.
Yeah, immediately I went to Milledgeville at Alden Hebron. Alden Hebron with that win, as you mentioned, over Orangeville, and Milledgeville just continuing on. So, yeah, another exciting week here looks like in week 2 for 8-man.
Yep. All right, Mitch, I think that about wraps us up. Do we want to call out some games from around the state? Obviously, we focus here on the western side of the state of Illinois, but we're not limited to that. We can talk about what stands out around the state. Let's get into some games and teams that we need to keep our eye on.
Yeah, well, we mentioned some games in the preview show of some big games in the week. So might as well just kind of wrap that out. First one, the defending 1A champs in Camp Point Central, 69-0 over North Green. So that show certainly rolls on there. The game you mentioned, East St. Louis over Loyola. East St. Louis, a surprising win, 34-7 over the 2-time defending 8A champs. Obviously, we know that East St. Louis is talented. Usually Loyola, though, puts up a little bit better of a fight, but we'll see. Thursday night, this was a game that I was excited about. I did watch this game. It was the Hun School from New Jersey going up against Mount Carmel, 2 nationally ranked programs. This was a blow-for-blow game. The quarterback, Jack Moran, for the Hun School threw for like 400-some yards and 5 touchdowns. They ended up winning 42-38. They scored with under a minute to go, but it was a great game by Mount Carmel as well. So I expect them in that 7A bracket to really be a player. Aurora Christian in 1A beat your alma mater 24-19. They beat Ottawa Marquette.
Yep.
The defending 3A champs, Byron, they win 56-7 over Rock Falls. And I don't know if I have the score right. I do know Maroa Forsyth beat Athens. I think it was 42-14. So 2 teams that Athens may be a 1A team, but certainly 2 teams in 2A that we'll probably see later on when we start talking about playoffs.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, a lot of intrigue. And, before we wrap up, Mitch, did you catch the end of the Instant Reacts? Oh, go ahead.
Okay. It's funny you say that because no, I stopped listening. Not for any reason. I don't have the last 15 minutes. I haven't listened to that yet.
Okay.
So if you're gonna spoil it. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, I need to know where you fall here because an epic debate erupted between Brian Stocking and Matt Randazzo.
Okay.
So Stocking, which we always joke is Mr. Doom and Gloom, right? So of course, he would quote unquote, I don't know, quote him directly, but paraphrasing him, a lot of these teams are desperate for a win in week 2. They cannot afford to be 0-2. If they're 0-2, you've lost all your momentum and blah, blah, blah. And Dazzo just jumped all over it. He's like, it's one game. It's one football game that they lost. Next week, even if they're 0-2, like what? So where do you fall on this? Because it was a good, epic debate, rant, whatever you want to call it.
I think there's truth in both, right? Because we talked about that there's some teams that if they start 0-2, their schedule or their slate of games gets a lot tougher. Now, whether we're talking that means in jockeying for position for the playoffs or like in the Stark County in Anaheim Weathersfield, losing that game in week 2 has implications on if you win your division. So do I think that teams that start 0-2 won't make the playoffs? No, I don't believe that. I don't know how if you're 0-1, you're not losing momentum if you go 0-2 because you don't have momentum. So that's not right. So there's both sides I would agree with that. It's not the end of the world if you're 0-2. You might lose out on a couple of things here, like we mentioned. If it's a playoff spot or if it's a division crown, but I'm with both sides on that. I can see both sides of that argument. I would side more with Dazzle because it's not doom and gloom if you're 0-2.
I was gonna say Dazzle's not gonna want to hear you saying you're siding with both, but he did. He really missed you the other night. He was just way thrown off. No Mitch, and he doesn't know what to do.
Well, I'm glad you finally called on him 45 minutes into the episode. I'm sure he loved sitting there without being called on the entire episode. And then Cuff showed up, and then Cuff was there randomly too.
To be honest, it was only Stocking on the screen. They were in the background, like finishing up stuff for the show. And then they just kind of like poked their head over Stocking's shoulder, mainly to harass him. But then I called them in to, give their take. So, but no, we got them all in. It was a full boat. Go back and listen to the instant reacts if you haven't already. It's entertaining as always.
Oh, of course. And then speaking of the score in Channel 8, we didn't really get into this. Where would you like to go in week 2, or where do you know where you're going yet?
Well, Mitch, I have to be honest with you and the loyal listeners. I will not be walking the sidelines in week 2. Yep. We have a prior engagement. We have a party to go to on Friday night. So, it's a bit of a date night for my wife and I. Okay. We're going out. Sure. So I will not be walking the sideline. Where would you want to go? Well, man, if I could stay in the Northwest Upstate Illini and drive up to Lena Winslow, I would do that for the Lena Winslow Fulton game. If I was staying a little more, Quad Cities centric, that Stark County Anawan Weathersfield game that I caught a year ago would be great.
Could you get Rock Ridge and Mercer County on a swing?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you could start You could start at Mercer County and then head to Rock Ridge. That'd be a good one. You're right. If I'm looking at pairing 2 games together, that's probably what I would have asked for. Yep. Yeah, that's an easy swing.
Western Big 6 teams are on the road for the most part other than Quincy, but you're not going down there. Galesburg's home, Monmouth United's home. So I guess I would say that's probably your best bet would be to cover Princeton at Rock Ridge and Sherrard at Mercer County.
I will be following along through your Twitter efforts and also probably a little bit of NFHS if I get a chance. So, yep. So, all right, well, we'll be back next week to break it all down and talk about what we saw, what stood out to us again, and we'll keep moving down the way here. We're gonna blink and it's gonna be week 7 or week 8. So
happens every year. So fun to get started, and we'll just we'll see what happens here in week 2.
All right, thanks so much. We'll see you.
That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to go out to Apple Podcasts or Podbean and subscribe so you can follow along, and downloads will come automatically every week. You can follow along on Twitter at ViewFromWestPod. You can also email me if you're interested in being a sponsor, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.